Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this time, the second-generation Kazekage shaman stood up to mediate. His tone was calm and steady. Everyone, we are not here to settle personal grudges, but to discuss how to end this war. The pain and destruction brought by the war are already deep enough, now it is time to end it. The third-generation Mizukage followed his words and nodded. Yes, the Kazekage is right. We need to formulate a reasonable charter to end this war. After the third-generation Mizukage finished speaking, everyone nodded. They understood that although the countries did not get what they wanted in the war, the village could no longer support it. If they continue to fight, the village might be disbanded before they won on the battlefield, especially the Sand Ninja. They were already poor, originally. They wanted to rely on this ninja world war to gain enough benefits to develop the village, but now they are getting poorer and poorer. The reason why Shaman was able to become the second-generation Kazekage, on the one hand, it was because of his previous achievements in battle, and on the other hand, it was because he developed the skills of puppetry and sand manipulation. The development of puppetry gave hope to the impoverished sand ninjas, who needed time to recover and develop their village. Therefore, he would naturally agree to stop the war now so that they could focus on reconstruction and development. As for the Rock Ninja and the Mist Ninja, that battle not only killed their shadows, but also took away many of their companions in the village. Now they need to lick their wounds and wait for a better opportunity. At this time, the Raikage seemed to have thought of something, and said with bright eyes. In this war, Konoha's losses seem to be quite small, and hasn't Konoha always claimed to be the strongest? Why not let Lord Hokage make some sacrifices and support our small countries? Raikage's words were undoubtedly directed at Konoha, whether it is for the use of the village or to save face for oneself. Pushing Konoha to the center of the vortex is an effective strategy, and it must be said that these words are indeed quite effective. Although Uchiha Xingliu's Mangekyo shocked them, it brought benefits as well as disadvantages. Raikage's words, coupled with Konoha's current overpowering strength, made the other four countries have signs of uniting. The remaining Kages who were still discussing stopped discussing after hearing what Raikage said. They looked at the fourth Hokage, Uzumaki Mido, with malicious eyes, but Uzumaki Mido seemed not to see their malicious eyes, and poured a cup of tea calmly and tasted it. Her expression and action surprised everyone present. They thought she would react violently, but they didn't expect her to be so calm. But this did not make them give up forcing Uzumaki Mido. Compared with the benefits in hand, nothing else mattered. However, Uzumaki Mido was not affected by their eyes. She still tasted the tea calmly, as if enjoying this moment. Her calmness and confidence surprised everyone present. However, just when they began to doubt, Uzumaki Mido put down the teacup in her hand. She took a deep breath and then said slowly, "If you want me to give in, it's not impossible." She paused for a moment, and seeing that the expressions of the other Kages became somewhat expectant after hearing this, she continued. "I propose that we hold a joint Chunin exam and fairly distribute the benefits of each country through the results of this exam. Don't you want to get more? Then go and win the final victory of this exam, otherwise you should go back to develop honestly." Uzumaki Mido's words stunned everyone present. They didn't expect her to make such a suggestion. However, after thinking about it carefully, this suggestion is feasible. Distributing benefits through the results of the exam can not only avoid direct conflicts, but also let others see the strength of the ninja village, so as to receive more tasks. However, this suggestion is not so easy to implement. They need to believe in the new generation of ninjas in their village and need to see their strength and potential. Moreover, if the new generation of ninjas in Konoha is really outstanding, then Uzumaki Mido's concession will bring greater benefits. The people present began to think, and they began to recall the new generation of ninjas in Konoha. Then it was confirmed that there are some geniuses in Konoha now. However, these geniuses have not yet opened up the gap with the new generation of their own village, and they are sure to win. So, after some thinking and discussion, they agreed to Uzumaki Mido's proposal. They decided to pass the Chunin joint examination to fairly distribute the benefits of each country. After the proposal was passed, the five Kages began to discuss the location of the exam. If the venue is in their own village, it will definitely bring many benefits to the village. Even the contestants will have a home advantage. But in the end, the venue was still given to Konoha, because Uzumaki Mido had already compromised in their eyes. They had to make certain concessions. Giving the venue to Konoha was a concession from the other Kages. Now that the core issue has been resolved, there are only some other trivial matters left. After discussing these things, the 5 Kage conference also came to an end, and the Kages of various countries set out on their return journey. After the meeting, Uzumaki Mito immediately asked the people accompanying him to notify the Konoha ninjas on the front line. She knew that the war was over for them and it was time for them to go home. After the news spread, the Konoha ninjas were boiling. They hugged each other, and some even cried with joy. At this moment, they can finally put down the fatigue and pressure of the war and return to their familiar home. Not long after, the news spread throughout Konoha. The villagers learned that the war was over and the ninjas of Konoha were about to return triumphantly, and the whole village was boiling. When Uzumaki Mito returned to Konoha, the streets and alleys were crowded with people who came to welcome her. They waved flags, set off fireworks, beat gongs and drums, and celebrated this moment enthusiastically. Uzumaki Mito felt a little unworthy. This time, the war was able to end thanks to those Konoha ninjas who fought desperately. In Uzumaki Mito's mind, she just participated in the negotiations as a Hokage. Uchiha Xingliu was also in the crowd at this time. He looked at Uzumaki Mito's face and knew what she was thinking, but she didn't think that if it weren't for her superior strength and the strength after becoming Hokage, this war might continue for a while before it ends, and the people who died during this period were actually saved by Uzumaki Mito, especially Orochimaru's parents. Uchiha Xingliu looked aside, and Orochimaru was looking very happy. He was standing in the team of wounded soldiers at this time, showing a childishness that Uchiha Xingliu had never seen before. Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Snakes are cold-blooded creatures, but even so, they still crave warmth. This truth is fully reflected in Orochimaru. On weekdays, Orochimaru always appears in front of everyone with a mature and steady image, but on this special night, he changed his previous image and showed a childishness he had never had before. His face was filled with a bright smile, and he talked cordially with his parents, as if he wanted to tell them everything that had happened in the past period of time. In the original history, Orochimaru's change began with the death of his parents in that war. In front of his parents' tombstones, he found the shed skin of a white snake, which was rarely seen at ordinary times. At this time, the third-generation Hokage also comforted Orochimaru and said, his parents have been reborn somewhere, so the death of his parents and the shed skin of the white snake had a profound impact on Orochimaru. After that, the shed skin of the white snake has always been regarded as a lucky thing by him, and it also laid the foundation for his later snake ninjutsu. Orochimaru also started to go to darkness from here, but deep in his heart, he still retained a trace of love for life and expectations for the future. But then the death of Rope Tree and the guidance of Danzo made him completely walk into the darkness, and now, this kind of thing will no longer happen. Orochimaru's parents did not die in the war, and he has embarked on another completely different path. This made Uchiha Xingliu a little dazed. It turned out that he had changed so many things unknowingly. Uchiha Xingliu got rid of the 2 scourges at the beginning, which gave Konoha a new vitality, even if he is not counted. As long as Konoha is given a certain amount of time to develop, Konoha can completely fight for alone. But at this moment, Uchiha Xingliu suddenly found that Orochimaru's face was cloudy and his expression became extremely ugly. He couldn't help but feel a little strange in his heart, because Orochimaru was always able to remain calm and composed, and rarely had such emotional out of control. However, what surprised him even more was that Orochimaru's parents were comforting him instead. But this comfort seemed to have no effect on Orochimaru, and his face became more and more ugly. Orochimaru began to look around, as if looking for someone. When his eyes fell on Uchiha Xingliu, his eyes suddenly lit up and he ran all the way to him. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Xingliu as if he was looking at a life-saving straw, and said with a hint of hope, Xingliu-kun, I have something I want to ask you for help. As long as you help me, I can agree to any conditions. After hearing this, Uchiha Xingliu couldn't help but feel a little confused. He looked thoughtfully at the location where Orochimaru's parents were. They were standing with the wounded and looked at this side with a wry smile. This made him understand why Orochimaru was so anxious. Sure enough, Orochimaru then explained the whole thing to Uchiha Xingliu. It turned out that although his parents did not die in the war, they were infected with the new toxin of the Sand Ninja. Although they were lucky enough to be rescued, this toxin has greatly reduced the lifespan of their cells. in other words, they now have only a few years to live. And Orochimaru's request is to hope that Uchiha Xingliu can ask the Senju clan if there is a solution. He understands what Orochimaru's request means, but he also knows that this problem may not be solved. If the Senju clan really has the technology to solve the problem of cell lifespan, then the ending of the Senju clan can only be the two options of extermination and unification of the world. After all, this technology solves the problem of immortality, and when it is known, it will become the enemy of the world. However, the Senju clan did not appear to be exterminated or unified, which means that they do not have this technology. Although the Senju clan has no solution, Uchiha Xingliu does have a solution. He can seal Orochimaru's parents and stop the countdown of their lives. But this method only treats the symptoms and not the root cause. After being sealed, it is equivalent to death, but Uchiha Xingliu felt it necessary to tell Orochimaru about this plan. He looked at Orochimaru's anxious and helpless eyes, and couldn't help feeling a little pity in his heart. He knew that Orochimaru needed a solution to relieve his anxiety and helplessness at this time, even if this solution was not a long-term solution. So, Uchiha Xingliu said, "In fact, I have a way to help you." Orochimaru immediately raised his head and looked at Uchiha Xingliu with a glimmer of hope. Uchiha Xingliu continued, "It is to seal them up and let them enter a state of suspended animation. This way, you can prolong their lives." After listening to this, Orochimaru fell into deep thought. He looked at Uchiha Xingliu in front of him with a tangled face, and couldn't help feeling a little conflicted. He knew that this plan was not a perfect solution, but it was also a feasible option for now. Finally, Orochimaru bowed deeply and said, "Thank you very much, Xingliu-kun, but I can't answer you the answer to this question now." He shook his head with a wry smile, and then said, "I need to consult with my parents before I can give you an answer." Uchiha Xingliu waved his hand and said indifferently, "It's okay, you don't have to be so entangled, it's up to you to decide whether to use this plan or not." Uchiha Xingliu looked at Orochimaru's back as he left, and couldn't help feeling a little weird. He realized that although Orochimaru's fate had changed because of his intervention, some things still seemed to be determined by fate. Now because his parents' cells were damaged by poisoning, Orochimaru would most likely still go down the path of biological research in the future. This made Uchiha Xingliu feel that fate was something very strange. Maybe one day, the boomerang you threw out will come back and hit you right in the middle of your eyebrows. But if you say that this kind of thing is really unchangeable, that's not necessarily true, because Uchiha Xingliu is convinced that as long as the medical ability is turned on, he can definitely solve the damaged cells of Orochimaru's parents, but the current ability is enough to use. Blood and Sharingan are the first choice for hanging up. He is not a saint. What he needs is Orochimaru's ability in the future, not his parents. So Uchiha Xingliu can't do such a selfless thing. Being able to provide a sealing solution is already the limit of what he can do as a friend. Uzumaki Mito also noticed the movement here at this time. She signaled to Uchiha Xingliu, "Let him gather at the Hokage building." After seeing this, although Uchiha Xingliu didn't know what Uzumaki Mito wanted to talk to him about, he still nodded in agreement. Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Uchiha Xingliu arrived at the Hokage building, Uzumaki Mito had just arrived. These days of constant travel and the open and secret struggles in the meeting made her face exhausted, but as soon as she saw Uchiha Xingliu, she became energetic and didn't want to make him worry. "Xingliu, thanks to you this time." Uzumaki Mito sighed. Otherwise, this meeting would probably not have ended so smoothly. Uchiha Xingliu smiled slightly, and did not take credit for himself, but motioned her to continue. Uzumaki Mito told him in detail what happened in the Five Shadows meeting. Through her narration, Uchiha Xingliu learned that a series of complicated things happened in the Five Shadows meeting. Although there were some twists and turns, the final result was satisfactory. Now Uzumaki Mito's trust in Uchiha Xingliu has reached an unprecedented level. She is well aware of Uchiha Xingliu's ability and strength. In a series of previous events, he also showed wisdom and decisiveness far beyond his peers. Although he is young, his decision-making and strength are impressive. In Uzumaki Mito's opinion, Uchiha Xingliu is a suitable candidate to shoulder the responsibility of Hokage. Therefore, she will consult Uchiha Xingliu for some important decisions that affect the future direction of the village. I hope to find a better solution from his opinions and suggestions, after listening to Uzumaki Mito's description. Uchiha Xingliu was a little confused. Things have been completed according to the established plan. Why did Uzumaki Mito still ask him to come? As if seeing his doubts, Uzumaki Mito said. Although things are going smoothly, the location of the jointly held Chunin exam is also chosen in Konoha, but in this exam, the ninjas of the other 4 countries may join forces first to eliminate Konoha. In fact, Uzumaki Mito gradually figured out this situation after the 5 shadows meeting. She observed that the shadows of the other 4 villages showed signs of unity during the meeting. This may be because Konoha's strength is too strong at the current stage, which has aroused their vigilance and concern. After all, before this, Uzumaki Mito basically did not show up as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and this time she suddenly became Hokage, and Uchiha Aang's eyes also showed the Mangekyo Sharingan. These things will inevitably touch their sensitive lines. It also made her realize that in this exam, the rest of the villages are likely to eliminate Konoha first. After all, if Konoha can be eliminated first, then Konoha will not only lose the qualification to compete for interests, but also lose its own interests. This will greatly restrict the development of Konoha, and at the same time provide better opportunities for other villages. After hearing this, Uchiha Xingliu pondered for a moment, and agreed with Uzumaki Mito's statement in his heart, and understood why she was looking for him. In the original plan, he only needed to watch the show from the side and make the final insurance. However, the situation has changed now. If the other 4 countries really join forces, even White Fang will find it difficult to resist. After all, although White Fang is gifted, he is not invincible. Sure enough, Uzumaki Mito then revealed her thoughts. She hoped that Uchiha Xingliu could officially participate in this exam and suppress the players from other ninja villages with his strength. Hearing this request, Uchiha Xingliu rolled his eyes helplessly, but he still agreed to this request. In his heart, he had already anticipated that the participants of this exam were not ordinary ninjas. Even if the Jinchuriki appeared, he was not surprised, but he knew in his heart that this was impossible, because at this time, there is no Jinchuriki who can use the power of the tailed beasts at will in the future. Maybe it has something to do with the Uzumaki clan not being destroyed. Thinking of this, Uchiha Xingliu couldn't help but look at Uzumaki Mito a few more times. In his impression, it was indeed a bit outrageous that Konoha village watched its ally, the Uzumaki clan, being destroyed. Perhaps because of some strange emotions in his eyes, Uzumaki Mito felt a little confused and touched her face unconsciously. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with her appearance, she patted Uchiha Xingliu's forehead with some dissatisfaction. Uchiha Xingliu felt a little embarrassed by being patted like this, and could only smile awkwardly. The matter was over, and just as he was about to say goodbye and leave, Uzumaki Mito asked him for another commission. Xiao Xingliu, if possible, teach me a lesson about the Cloud Ninja in this exam. Uchiha Xingliu certainly understood why Uzumaki Mito said that. Uzumaki Mito had already known what happened in the meeting, originally told him. Hearing the anger and determination in Uzumaki Mito's tone, he couldn't help but feel a chill. It seems that even if he is the Hokage, a woman is still a woman. He thought silently in his heart. However, for such a small matter, Uchiha Xingliu still agreed easily. Seeing him agree so readily, Uzumaki Mito immediately seemed to think of something, and his face quickly changed to a look of watching a play, staring straight at Uchiha Xingliu, and slowly said, "Don't rush to leave, there is another private matter to find you." The smile on her face became more and more obvious, as if waiting to see Uchiha Xingliu's reaction. "Uchiha contacted me, he intends to let you get engaged to his granddaughter. How about it, are you interested?" Hearing this, Uchiha Xingliu suddenly understood why Uchiha Jiji ran away as soon as he saw him during this period of time. Even if he is shy, it won't be to this extent. It turns out that everything was because of the old guy Uchiha who was behind the scenes. With Uchiha Ji's personality, knowing that his grandfather wanted to marry him, he would of course run away shyly. This made Uchiha Xingliu feel a little itchy, and he secretly decided that he must give Uchiha a big gift in return if he had the chance. Looking at the changing expressions on his face, Uzumaki Mito nodded with satisfaction. As a woman, although she did not feel the malice of Uchiha Xingliu in her perception, but her sixth sense still made her feel that Uchiha Xingliu was scheming him in his heart. now she felt very satisfied to see Uchiha Xingliu's fun. In addition, she did not lie. These days, Uchiha, as her guard, has been talking about this matter beside her, therefore, speaking out about this matter now not only fulfills the commission of others, but also satisfies her inner desire. Why not do this kind of win-win situation? As for whether this incident would affect Tsunade's future relationship with him, in her opinion, matters of the heart should be handled by the parties involved. However, this little brat can really attract girls. Thinking of this, Uzumaki Mito narrowed his eyes and sighed slightly. Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After leaving the Hokage building, Uchiha Xingliu was obsessed with Uchiha Aang's behavior. Although his initial intention was just to become a relative of his own, this behavior did cause him to fall into a big trap, which made Uchiha Xingliu very concerned. In addition, Uchiha Aang went to Uzumaki Mito to propose marriage to his granddaughter, which simply did not treat Tsunade as a human being. Uchiha Xingliu was not without ideas about the choice of future partners. He learned that in this era, the system of monogamy was acceptable, and it was also possible to marry multiple wives. But how to achieve this goal depends on one's own ability, and he is still very young now, so this kind of worry can be put aside for the time being. He believes that as time goes by, some things will develop naturally, therefore, he decided to let things go and let things proceed naturally. But Uchiha Aang's behavior did interfere with this aspect. It is normal for Uchiha Xingliu to feel unhappy. At this time, his eyes rolled, as if he thought of something, and he laughed. Uchiha Aang, who was chatting and laughing with his granddaughter, felt his scalp tingling, but he didn't care and continued to chat and laugh with Jili. After all, Uchiha Aang hadn't seen Jili for such a long time, and he still missed her. It has been several days since Uzumaki Mito returned to Konoha, and the smoke of war is slowly dissipating. Some frontline teams have returned to Konoha, making this one slightly deserted village full of lively atmosphere again. In the past few days, Uchiha Xingliu silently observed Uchiha Jili's every move. Uchiha Jili is usually a shy girl. She always treats everything around her with a cautious attitude. Like a fledgling deer, she is full of curiosity and fear about the unknown world. Whenever Uchiha Xingliu looked at him, she always responded with shyness and awe flashing in her big eyes. Uchiha Xingliu understood that this shyness of Jili was largely caused by Uchiha Aang. He was too keen on arranging the future for Jili, but never took her feelings into consideration. Otherwise, no matter how introverted Jili was, he would not stay away from him, let alone make simple contact so difficult. He must have said something to Jili, otherwise this situation would not have happened. In fact, it was just as Uchiha Xingliu thought, because he opened the Mangekyo at this age. Uchiha Aang cared about his bloodline. He believed that as long as Uchiha Xingliu married Jilio, his future children would definitely inherit their talents. Moreover, Uchiha Xingliu managed to get rid of the third generation and others. As Jili's husband, this kind of talent and scheming was not considered unfair to her, but he did love Jili and told her everything about Uchiha Xingliu. When Uchiha Jiliu knew that Uchiha Xingliu had opened the Mangekyo, her view of Uchiha Xingliu changed profoundly. She used to think that as long as she worked hard enough, she could catch up with him, and before, they were just classmates or partners. But now her grandfather suddenly told her that Uchiha Xingliu would be her husband in the future. This change was too sudden, and she, who was already introverted and shy, had the idea of running away. Of course, now that Uchiha Xingliu has figured out this fact, he will certainly not sit idly by. He is not Naruto, so instead of hesitating, he might as well choose to punch straight. So, when the class was about to start at the ninja school that day, Uchiha Xingliu pulled Uchiha Jiliu up without saying anything. Without giving her a chance to refute, he directly asked him to join his skipping team. Although Uchiha Jiliu was a little confused when he was pulled up again, when he saw who was pulling him, he didn't know what he thought of, and finally chose to remain silent. She lowered her head, her cheeks were slightly flushed, and even her neck was red like an apple. Tsunade and Nono looked at this scene with some strange looks on their faces, but finally just followed. Jiraiya looked at the four-person team in front of him with admiration, and said in his heart that they were too powerful, but in this situation, he could only helplessly watch their backs as they went away. Because he didn't know how to use shadow clones, he couldn't be lazy like other people and skip classes and get full marks in exams. But Orochimaru didn't come today. He accompanied his parents to the Konoha hospital. For him, his parents' affairs are the most important thing now, although his parents have been sentenced by the doctors. For him, as long as there is a little hope, he doesn't want to give up. On the other side, Uchiha Xingliu brought Jili all the way to the practice field, and then let go of Jilio's hand. He took advantage of Tsunade and the others not arriving yet, and whispered in Uchiha Jilio's ear. "Jilio, you don't want the news that your grandfather wants you to get engaged to me to spread, right?" Jilio was still shy because Xingliu suddenly spoke in her ear, but after hearing this, her mind was like an explosion, a blank. Some people panic when facing difficulties, but Uchiha Xingliu is the opposite. After a brief confusion, she became calmer. She pushed Uchiha Xingliu away and said lightly. "Xingliu, what are you talking about? I don't know about this at all." Uchiha Xingliu was a little surprised to see Jilio suddenly calm down, but this did not affect his plan. He smiled and said. "Jilio, you don't need to deny it. As long as you do me a favor, I promise that this news will not spread." Hearing this, Jilio's heart was lifted. She knew that a new way of opening eyes had appeared in the clan recently, and this method was proposed by the man in front of her. The effect is good, but it is very useless. As if he saw her worry, he said again. "Don't worry, helping me won't hurt anyone." Uchiha Xingliu's promise did not convince Jili, but looking at the man in front of her who might be her husband in the future, her face turned red, and she nodded and agreed. Uchiha Xingliu looked at Jili, who blushed again and nodded secretly. This is the Uchiha Jili he knows. The one who was so calm just now made him feel a little strange. Then he told Uchiha Jili about his plan, which surprised Jili. After a while, Tsunade and Nono also rushed over. The two people who were still curious about what you were talking about with Jili heard his plan after getting closer. Then Tsunade was excited and asked to join. When Nono saw that several people had joined the plan, she agreed to the action after hesitating for a moment. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this time, Uchiha was sitting in a spacious and bright living room at home. The sunlight shone on him through the window, adding a touch of warmth to him. He was wearing comfortable home clothes, slippers on his feet, and holding a cup of freshly brewed hot tea in his hand. The cup of tea exuded a faint fragrance, which made him feel relaxed and happy. This time he accompanied Uzumaki Mito to attend the Five Shadow Conference, which brought great prestige to Uchiha. Not to mention, Uzumaki Mito also brought the news of the end of the war at this meeting. This made the Uchiha clan also enjoy the dividends of this wave of prestige. Therefore, during this period, the work of the guard team can be said to be much smoother. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and felt the fragrance of tea filling his nose. At this moment, he forgot all his troubles and felt as if he was in a peaceful and harmonious world. Just as he was immersed in this leisure and comfort, there was a violent knock at the door. Before he could scold, Uchiha Xien opened the door and rushed in. With Tsunade and Nono, the moment he saw him, Uchiha Xien said with red eyes and choked. "Dad, something happened to Jili." This sentence exploded in Uchiha-ang's mind like a bomb. It made his originally quiet mind instantly chaotic, with all kinds of emotions, memories, and thoughts mixed together, as if a storm was raging. Uchiha felt his heartbeat speed up, as if it was about to jump out of his chest, but he still tried to stay calm, controlled his trembling body, and said. "Jili, what happened to her?" Uchiha Xien opened his mouth after hearing it, and didn't know what to say. Finally, it was Tsunade who stood up and explained. "Jiji has been kidnapped by a group of spies and is now confronting Xingliu. Xingliu asked us to inform you. Hurry up and come with us." Perhaps it was because of his concern, or perhaps it was because so many people came together, which made the authenticity of this matter much greater. After hearing this, Uchiha hurriedly stood up and rushed to the scene with them, but he never thought that in front of Uchiha Xingliu, who had a Mangekyo, who could kidnap Jiji, he also didn't notice that a small camera was recording his every move. When Uchiha arrived at the scene, he could hardly believe what he saw. Uchiha Jiji was kidnapped by a group of people, and the leader even pointed a kunai at her neck, and Xingliu was standing opposite them with a frown, confronting them. This scene made him feel very shocked and terrified. He felt his body trembling, and his heart was full of anger and worry. Uchiha couldn't imagine the scene of losing his governance. That scene kept flashing in his mind, making him feel heartbroken. he didn't know what to do, so he could only anxiously think about countermeasures, hoping that he could come up with some way to save the governance. At this time, Uchiha Xingliu said, "I agree to let you go, but you have to let go of the girl in your hand." That his voice was firm and powerful, which made Uchiha feel a glimmer of hope. The leader looked no different from an ordinary Konoha villager, and it was impossible to tell that he was a spy from another village. After hearing Xingliu's words, he laughed and said sarcastically, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I let her go, I'll be beheaded in the next second. Now there are two choices: either we die with this kid, or let us take her away from the land of fire." After the spy's sarcastic words fell, Uchiha suddenly felt a blank in his mind. He knew in his heart that either of these two choices would mean death for Uchiha Xingliu. The first choice was to die immediately, and the second choice was to save her life temporarily, but after leaving the land of fire, her safety would be completely unguaranteed. For Uchiha Xingliu, death might have been the best gift. Uchiha Xingliu's subsequent fierce reaction made Uchiha Ang's heart sink to the bottom. "Impossible. Release Xingliu immediately." Sure enough, after Uchiha Xingliu shouted this, the spy on the opposite side instantly became crazy. He laughed wildly, no longer making any disguise, and stabbed the hostage with the kunai in his hand. At this moment, Uchiha saw that the kunai was about to pierce Xingliu's body, and the pain in his heart almost made him crazy. He didn't understand why Uchiha Xingliu, who had always been wise, became so impulsive and stupid at this critical moment. He also didn't understand why things were progressing so quickly, but he was too late to blame Xingliu. He could only mobilize his fastest speed in his life and rush out in an instant, trying to interrupt it all. However, it seemed too late. In the dynamic vision of the Sharingan, he clearly saw the kunai penetrate into Xingliu's body little by little, but the next second, a figure that even the Sharingan could not see clearly flashed by. The person who had just held Xingliu hostage flew out directly, and the two people behind him also lost their lives silently. Uchiha hurried forward to pick up Xingliu, and he looked at his granddaughter in his arms nervously. She slowly opened her eyes and opened her mouth to say something, but the next second, a large amount of blood gushed out of her mouth, instantly dyeing Uchiha Ang's arms red, and also blocked her words. The bright red color made Uchiha panic. He hurriedly checked where Xingliu was injured, but something happened that made him desperate. A deep knife mark was imprinted on Xingliu's heart. Even a medical ninja cannot save this fatal internal injury. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Uchiha hugged Xingliu tightly. His heart was broken. His Sharingan spun rapidly. Blood and tears slowly flowed from the corners of his eyes, and the shape of a kaleidoscope slowly formed in his eyes. "My Xingliu, my child." That just when he was grieving and wanted to cry, Xingliu in his arms suddenly disappeared with a bang. This scene that interrupted the chanting made Uchiha stunned. The next moment, there were dense whistling sounds around, which were only made when using the instant body technique. Qifeng is worthy of being the head of the Uchiha clan. He has played a leading role. That's right, he is worthy of being the head of the clan. He is so magnanimous. Pucci. What are you laughing at? Is there anything funny? Didn't you see the chief open the Mangekyo? Everyone, applaud. No, I just remembered something funny. My wife is pregnant. Ha ha ha, really? Then my wife is pregnant too. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha felt that these voices were particularly sharp, like needles piercing his ears, but like a flash of lightning, instantly pulling him back from fantasy to reality. However, at this moment, he would rather be unconscious. He mechanically raised his head and looked around, only to see that he was surrounded by Uchiha clansmen, and their eyes were focused on him. He scanned the crowd stiffly. Even his mortal enemy Uchiha Setsuna was standing in the crowd. At this time, Uchiha Setsuna's face was intertwined with complex emotions. He stared at Uchiha with envy and relief in his eyes. Uchiha Setsuna's envy was beyond words. He had been eager to open the Mangekyo Sharingan for a long time, and now, Uchiha, who really didn't get along with him, opened the Mangekyo. He secretly lamented his bad luck in his heart. Why didn't he open the Mangekyo Sharingan? However, he was very fortunate because it was not him who faced this embarrassing situation today. He glanced at Uchiha with a gloating look, secretly laughing at his bad luck. Uchiha was like an ignorant little bird, falling into the trap of a cunning fox without noticing. He stood stiffly in the middle of the crowd, facing the gaze of everyone, and felt his face getting hot, looking at the tribesmen around him. Uchiha suddenly had a bad memory in his mind, and his face turned pale. Again, with a fluke mentality, he opened his mouth tremblingly and asked in a tentative tone. "You didn't record it?" That his words immediately attracted the attention of the tribesmen. They exchanged glances with each other, as if communicating with a tacit signal. "We weren't here at the beginning, how could we record it?" "Is Chi-Feng a little confused?" A tribesman came forward with a smile on his face and shook his head gently. "That's right, we just arrived, how could we record it for you?" "Don't worry, it's not us." Another tribe member walked up to Uchiha and patted his shoulder to comfort him. Uchiha heaved a long sigh of relief when he heard this. Although he had already died in front of the tribe members, as long as he didn't record it, he had room to be stubborn. He secretly rejoiced in his heart, feeling that he had escaped from a crisis. However, in the next second, hell seemed to suddenly come to him. I saw his son, Uchiha Xien, walking out of the crowd with a smug smile on his face. "Fortunately, I have recorded it very completely this time." Uchiha Xien raised the video equipment in his hand and shook it gently. "I believe that this video will help study the opening of the Mangekyo, and we need to discuss it carefully." Uchiha Xien's words echoed in Uchiha ears, like a heavy hammer, instantly smashing his luck. Looking at Uchiha Xien who had his back to him, Uchiha eyes instantly turned red. Suddenly, his figure turned into a residual image like a gust of wind, and instantly came to Uchiha Xien's side. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the video equipment in Uchiha Xien's hand with lightning speed. "Got it." Uchiha thought so, and the moment his hand touched the equipment, the video recorder suddenly disappeared in Uchiha Xien's hand. All this process is said to be slow, but in fact it only happened in a short moment. In the eyes of others, only Uchiha figure can be seen to move to the side of Uchiha Xien in an instant, and he stretched out his hand to take the camera. However, confusingly, the camera seemed to disappear out of thin air and disappeared. Why is Chi-Feng so anxious? Let me keep this camera first. Just when Uchiha was full of doubts and at a loss, a familiar voice came from the crowd. Uchiha Xingliu walked out from the crowd. He had a smug smile on his face, and his eyes revealed a cunning light. He raised the video equipment in his hand and smiled provocatively at Uchiha. Uchiha saw this scene and understood it instantly. All this was planned by Uchiha Xingliu, but what puzzled him was that he had not offended Uchiha Xingliu, so why did he target him so much? Uchiha Xingliu saw his expression and knew what he was thinking. Of course, he would not explain it to Uchiha. When Uchiha knew that he had asked Jili to help him, he should understand that he had overstepped his authority. Uchiha Xingliu was his granddaughter, and he could arrange it however he wanted, but Uchiha Xingliu was not his junior, whether in name or in strength. Uchiha is Uchiha Xingliu's subordinate. Although Uchiha Xingliu can understand his heart, he hopes to tie himself to the Uchiha chariot completely. But there are things that I won't give you, and you can't make your own decisions, so he planned what happened today to give Uchiha a warning. His plan is also very simple, that is, pretending to be a spy to kidnap Gigi, and finally let Gigi die in front of him. Of course, these spies and Uchiha Gigi are all his shadow clones, and the reason why he asked Uchiha Gigi for help is also very simple. The actors are already in place, and naturally there needs to be an audience present. He asked Uchiha Gigi to persuade Uchiha Xien, and then convey the message to other Uchiha clan members through Uchiha Xien. Although Tsunade and Nono joined temporarily, they also added more realism to the play, making Uchiha more easily deceived. In order to prevent Uchiha from seeing the flaw, Uchiha Xingliu took quick action the moment he arrived. He dealt with the spy like a quick knife, and let Gigi die in front of him, leaving Uchiha no time to react. Although all this was a warning, Uchiha Xingliu also wanted to see if he, as Gigi's grandfather, could open the Mangekyo, so he made a second-hand preparation, which was a video recorder. If Uchiha did not open the Mangekyo, Uchiha Xingliu planned to play this scene in the Uchiha clan on a loop. Fortunately, Uchiha opened the Mangekyo at the critical moment and saved himself. Thinking of this, Uchiha Xingliu clicked his tongue unhappily, but it doesn't matter, he still has a third-hand preparation. As Uchiha Xien said just now, this play allowed Uchiha to open the Mangekyo, which has a high research value. it is worth learning for every Uchiha who wants to open the Mangekyo, therefore. Uchiha Xingliu took the camera before Uchiha Ong. He held the camera with a smile on his face, but Uchiha Ong felt cold. It is worth celebrating that Chief Ong can open the Mangekyo, especially this camera that records this moment. This record is not only necessary for research, but also allows people to know the moment when Chief Ong opened the Mangekyo handsomely. Why don't we go back and hold a celebration banquet to let others see how the Uchiha chief opens the Mangekyo? Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha Xingliu's words hit Uchiha Eng's heart like a heavy hammer, and he instantly fell into the abyss of despair. His face was as pale as paper, his eyes flickered, and the kaleidoscope reflected in it was spinning wildly. His heartbeat was also accelerating, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. At this moment, he understood why those Uchiha who had been cheated by him in the past looked at him with complicated eyes. The joy of opening his eyes and the discomfort of social death were intertwined, giving him an indescribable experience. He stood there, his body trembling slightly, as fragile as a fallen leaf in the wind. Uchiha Ong took a deep breath and tried to calm his excited emotions. He closed his eyes tightly, trying to suppress this complex emotion. Looking at Uchiha Ong, who had experienced countless changes in his expression, Uchiha Xingliu understood that things should stop here. Things should not be done too much. This incident was enough for him to remember. He gently let go of the video recorder in his hand, with a smile on his face. Okay, don't worry, I'm just joking with you. As soon as the voice fell, the video recorder that had just fallen to the ground was instantly burned by a burst of flames. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Ong finally relaxed. However, the half-smile on Uchiha Xingliu's face made him feel nervous again. He began to realize that the video recorder just now might not be real. All this might just be a way for Uchiha Xingliu to give him a way out. However, does he have a choice? He can only accept this result and regard this incident as a joke. So that's it, it's just a joke, it doesn't matter, how could I care? That he forced a smile, then turned his head to look at Uchiha Xien and a group of Uchiha. He couldn't do anything with Uchiha Xingliu, but it didn't mean he couldn't do anything with others, especially Uchiha Xien, a filial son. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, and they fell on the Uchiha, making them feel as if their hearts were pierced by cold arrows. Uchiha Xien endured his gaze, and a sense of uneasiness surged in his heart. He began to look erratic, not daring to look at Uchiha Ong, and the cold sweat on his forehead slowly seeped out, slid down his cheeks, and merged into the collar. The other Uchiha also felt this tense atmosphere. They began to swallow nervously, their eyes wandering around. Well, isn't my wife going to give birth? I'm leaving first. Yes, my wife is also going to give birth, I'm leaving first. Let's go. These Uchiha knew Uchiha Eng's situation very well. After all, there were more than one or two people in the clan who opened their eyes like this. They had seen the anger of Uchiha after opening their eyes like this, and they didn't want to be the object of venting, so, after finding some untenable reasons, they all slipped away one by one. Even Uchiha Setsuna, who always had a tense relationship with Uchiha Ong, did not stay. After all, the current Uchiha Ong was no longer someone he could handle. Uchiha Setsuna did not want to be beaten by him, especially when he had already opened the Mangekyo. If he was really beaten, he would have nowhere to complain. These people could escape, but Uchiha Xien could not. He sighed helplessly and prepared to face the coming storm. He barely maintained a smile on his face, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Susanoo reminded him of the fear of being dominated by his father when he was a child, and Uchiha Xingliu disappeared the moment Uchiha turned around. In fact, in his plan, Nono and Tsunade were supposed to bring Uchiha here, and Uchiha Xien was arranged to go to the Hokage to report the matter. In this way, Uchiha Xien had an excuse to say that he did not know about this matter, but for some reason, Uchiha Xien had to follow to see the excitement. Since he wanted to have fun, Uchiha Xingliu would not stop him. As for whether he would become someone else's fun, that was not something Uchiha Xingliu could control. After the crowd dispersed, Uchiha instantly put away his smile, his face gloomy as if a storm was coming. He slowly pulled out his belt and walked towards Uchiha Xien. Uchiha Xien looked at his father, who was getting closer and closer, trying to awaken his father's love. Father, look at you. Mangekyo Sharingan, don't you dream of opening it? Hearing this, Uchiha sneered and raised the thing in his hand. A shrill scream resounded through the forest, causing the Uchiha who had just left to shudder, then he ran faster. It is said that after this incident, the Uchiha did not see Uchiha Shien for a whole month. Shadow, and every Uchiha who opened his eyes in this way in the future had a videotape that was not in his hands. After this incident, Uchiha no longer interfered with governance, which made governance return to the truant group. Occasionally, when he looked at Uchiha Xingliu, he would have a look that Uchiha Xingliu could not understand. In this regard, he just scratched his head and put it aside. After a period of careful consideration, Orochimaru still found Uchiha Xingliu, asked him to seal his parents, wait until he has researched a way to save his parents, and then lift the seal to save his parents' lives. Orochimaru thought very clearly that if he wanted to take this path, he would need much more resources than all the ninjutsu he had learned before, so, he wanted to join the Senju system in exchange for the required resources. Orochimaru is a real genius. Although he only spent a period of time studying ninjutsu, he has successfully transformed several ninjutsu. He changed the C-level Great Fireball Jutsu into an E-level Fireball Jutsu. Although the power has decreased, the difficulty of learning is greatly reduced, which is equivalent to the three-body jutsu. After being found out by Uzumaki Mito, these modified E-level ninjutsu were sent to the ninja school. Like the three-body jutsu, it was included in the scope of the exam. With this achievement, Orochimaru successfully joined the Senju department and exchanged for a lot of resources. Since then, Orochimaru's path has begun to enter the field of biology. Uchiha Xingliu doesn't care. He believes that Orochimaru can achieve success in any field. Moreover, if Orochimaru enters biological research so early, it is possible that he will be able to create a cracked version of the Sage mode in the future. Jiraiya has begun to accept the guidance of the Sage Fukasaku during this period, and he has also made rapid progress. Judging from this posture, he should be much stronger than he was in the original work. As for Nono and Tsunade, they learned medical ninjutsu under the guidance of Uchiha Xingliu. If this continues, everyone in the truant group will have a bright future. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone has their own ideals, so everyone is firmly moving towards their own life path. Uchiha Xingliu and others are just like this, moving forward step by step. Their footsteps left traces on the training ground of Konoha, which are the marks they have stepped on the road to becoming a stronger ninja. Time flies, and years are like songs. Inadvertently, time slips through your fingers like fine sand, quietly passing away. Unknowingly, it is almost the new year, and the jointly held Chunin exam will be held after the new year. These two events together make Konoha very lively. The new year is coming, and the end of the war has made the villagers start preparing for the celebration early. On the streets and alleys, people are talking about it, all filled with joy and expectation. In a corner of the ninja school, Uchiha Xingliu and his truant team are waiting for the results of the final exam. Teacher Dokichi stood in the classroom of the ninja school. His face was ashen, like a dark cloud pressing down on his head. His eyes were like sharp swords, staring at the leader of the skipping team, Uchiha Xingliu. His fists trembled slightly, highlighting that he was struggling to suppress his inner anger. However, when he turned his gaze to Uchiha Xingliu's test scores, his expression eased a little. He frowned and sighed, with a hint of helplessness and recognition in his tone. Uchiha Xingliu, although you often skipped classes, you got full marks in this exam. It seems that you still have some strength. After hearing this, Uchiha Xingliu raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a confident smile. He calmly said to teacher Dokichi, "This is all because of your good teaching." Dokichi's face, which had just eased, darkened again in an instant, and he seemed to be somewhat unwilling to accept this explanation. In Dokichi's mind, a student like Uchiha Xingliu, who often skipped classes, was able to get full marks in the exam, and then praised his teaching in person, which was undoubtedly a kind of irony in his eyes. But to his surprise, Uchiha Xingliu had no intention of stopping. Although the teaching is very basic, it is essential knowledge for ninjas. I am very grateful for your efforts, teacher. Uchiha Xingliu continued. His eyes revealed sincerity and frankness, as if he saw through the doubts and uneasiness in Dokichi's heart. Dokichi was stunned for a moment, and he understood what Uchiha Xingliu meant. Maybe he, an ordinary ninja, really couldn't help those talented students improve, but his teaching could help most students. He remembered his original intention, And just hoped that these children would have more self-protection power in the future, now that his goal has been achieved. What else is there to worry about? At this moment, Dokichi felt relieved. He smiled and nodded, accepting Uchiha Tsurayu's thanks and praise. When I skip class next year, please be more lenient, teacher. However, just when he felt satisfied, Uchiha Xingliu's words came back, and the black line returned to his face, but looking at Uchiha Xingliu running away, he showed a helpless and doting smile on his face. This kid. He shook his head, his smile full of warmth and tolerance. It's good to be young. After Uchiha Xingliu and his team joined together, they walked on the way home together. Now, except for Jiraiya and Uchiha Jiji, the rest of the skipping team have moved to the Senju clan. At this time, Orochimaru squeezed over a little embarrassedly, his fair face showed a hint of redness, and his eyes revealed a little embarrassment and expectation. He bit his lip, hesitated for a moment, and finally whispered his request. Xingliu-kun, can you help me unseal my parents before the new year? I want to celebrate the new year with them. Orochimaru's voice was very low, and he felt that his words made the air around him freeze for a moment. He knew that his request was a bit excessive. After all, he had not done any substantial help for Uchiha Xingliu. He felt a sense of apology in his heart, and felt like a burden who only wanted to take. However, Uchiha Xingliu did not show any dissatisfaction. He glanced at Orochimaru lightly, and a smile flashed in his eyes. For him, this was just a matter of effort, a problem that could be solved in a few seconds, and he also knew that Orochimaru was not useless, but he had not realized it yet. The several E-level attribute ninjutsu he invented were as difficult as the three-body technique, and consumed very little chakra. Even the genin could use it several times, which greatly improved the strength of Konoha genin. This made Uchiha Xingliu, who regarded Konoha as his own, very satisfied with him, so Uchiha Xingliu waved his hand and said easily, "No problem, it's a small matter. If you come to me that day, I will help you unblock it." Orochimaru heard this and showed gratitude on his face. He lowered his head, hiding his inner excitement, and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you, Xingliu-kun." At this time, Jiraiya came over happily. He rubbed his hands and said with a grin, "Xingliu, can you let me?" Uchiha Xingliu glanced at him and interrupted. "No." The smile on Jiraiya's face froze instantly, and he put on a pleading expression, clasped his hands together, as if worshipping Buddha, and muttered, "Xingliu, just promise me, I am your good friend." Uchiha Xingliu rolled his eyes at him and smiled knowingly. Of course he knew what Jiraiya wanted to do. He just wanted to celebrate the new year with him. However, he was not a babysitter to take care of these little friends. Although he wanted to make these little friends his right-hand men in the future, it did not mean that he had to accommodate all their needs. Orochimaru's matter was a piece of cake, but Jiraiya's request was not the same. Uchiha Xingliu waved his hand and said impatiently, "No, no, this is a matter of principle." After that, he left Jiraiya and turned to look at Uchiha Xingliu. Wouldn't it be nice to attend the celebration with a few cute girls? Why add Jiraiya to be a light bulb? Student Xingliu, do you have any plans for the new year? Although Uchiha Xingliu had gradually gotten used to the existence of Uchiha Xingliu, he was still a little shy when he was suddenly asked. She lowered her head, a blush appeared on her face, and she said softly, "No special arrangements." Uchiha Xingliu smiled after hearing this and said, "How about we go to the festival together tonight?" Of course, no, Tsunade and I, a total of 4 people. I have already made arrangements with them. Do you want to come? Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha Jiji raised his head and met Uchiha Xingliu's gaze, with a glimmer in his eyes that he hadn't noticed. It was a glimmer full of expectation and joy, like a bright star, attracting attention. She bit her lower lip lightly, with a shy smile on her face, then she nodded and said in a weak voice, "Okay." Her voice was very light, but Uchiha Xingliu heard it clearly. Uchiha Xingliu looked at her with a smile, and he admired Jiji very much. Although she was shy now, she was actually very strong inside. Just then, Tsunade came over. She looked at the interaction between Uchiha Xingliu and Uchiha Jiji, and felt a little uncomfortable in her heart for some reason. Her brows were slightly frowned. And a trace of doubt and dissatisfaction flashed in her eyes, then she snorted proudly, turned around, and quickened her pace to leave. Seeing this, Uchiha Xingliu turned around and smiled apologetically at Yuri, then said, "Then it's settled, I'll come to see you that day." After that, he also left quickly. Jiraiya smacked his lips and whispered, "You value love over friendship." Although he said that, his eyes revealed a kind of envy. When Uchiha Xingliu caught up with Tsunade, he found that she was no longer angry. Her anger seemed to come and go quickly. Tsunade turned back to her original appearance, lively and naughty. She took Uchiha Xingliu's hand and said coquettishly, "Xingliu, do you have a New Year's gift?" Her voice was full of expectation and joy. Uchiha Xingliu looked at her and couldn't help feeling a little funny. He knew that Tsunade was actually a very simple person, sometimes willful, sometimes naughty. She had not experienced the pain in the future, and her heart was very kind and warm. Thinking of this, he smiled and said, "Of course, I have been ready for a long time." Tsunade heard this and showed a happy expression on her face. She quickly asked, "What is the gift? Can you give it to me now?" Uchiha Xingliu said nothing more, but secretly opened the system and checked his own panel. Host, Uchiha Xingliu, Skills, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Purple, LV7, Indra Bloodline, Purple, LV7, Teleport, Purple, LV3, Flame Release Mastery, Blue, LV10, Wood Release Mastery, Blue, LV10, Sealing Technique Mastery, Blue, LV1, Ninjutsu Scroll Making, Blue, LV1, Medical Skill Mastery, Blue, LV1, Alchemy, Blue, LV1, Green and below abilities can be expanded with one click. Hang up bar, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Purple, LV7, Indra Bloodline, Purple, LV7, Teleport, Purple, LV3, Flame Release Mastery, Blue, LV10. Combat Power, 9999, Super Shadow. I won't pretend anymore, I'm going to show my cards. 0 to 20 is Genin, 200 to 500 is Chunin, 500, 1000 is Jonin, 1000 to 3000 is Kage, 3000 to 10,000 is Super Kage, 10,000 to 50,000 is Six Paths, 50,000 to 200,000 is Otsutsuki Ten-Tails. Please unlock more combat power to learn about the subsequent levels. Current world, Naruto, plot change, completely different, hang-up speed plus 100%, no change plus 0%, some change plus 30%, major change plus 70%, completely different plus 100%. Tip 1, the host is detected to break through to the next level, and the hang-up bar increases by 1. The current hang-up bar, for Tip 2, the improvement and promotion of the hang-up ability are affected to a certain extent by the host's thoughts. Tip 3, the host is detected to be about to break through the Six Paths combat power, and the novice welfare ends, hang-up speed plus 100%. Tip 4, the host has completely changed the plot, and new functions have appeared. Tip 5, the system will open the world gate function after the host meets the conditions. Tip 6, the host's ability is improved, and the idle system will continue to increase functions. Now that the new year is approaching, it has been half a year since the Five Shadows Conference. The system's prompts made Uchiha Xingliu understand some things. Judging from some of the system's comments, this system should have a mentally retarded AI. As for why it is mentally retarded, for example, the system actually has novice benefits, and he doesn't even know about this thing, then the AI doesn't remind him. What is this if not mentally retarded? The intelligence of this system cannot be said to be useless. It can only be said to be useless if it is used. The functions of the system depend entirely on his own exploration, but fortunately the prompts give a lot of things. Then there are the benefits for novices. It's over, but fortunately, the emergence of new functions has made up for this acceleration. And the previous speculation has become a reality. This system can really travel through the world. The gate of the world, as soon as you hear it, is used to travel through the world. Although I don't even know what the conditions are now, it's different from not having it to have it. There is another hint that makes him think, that is, hint 2, the ability to hang up will be affected by the host. This made him look at the alchemy ability. The ability of alchemy only appeared after the cooking skill was upgraded to blue. Uchiha Xingliu has tried it. Although this ability is very useful, it is not as strong as he thought. After all, it is only a blue ability, but with the addition of medical ability, he really made some very fantasy-style things, beauty pills and blood purification pills. These two things don't match the style of Naruto. Beauty pills, as the name suggests, can keep people young. There is nothing to say about this, but the blood purification pill, which seems to be used for monsters, is not too useful in Naruto, after all. The Otsutsuki family is not as famous as it is said to be, and this thing will definitely be very useful to Tsunade and the others. He was still worried that his strength improved too fast and his friends were too out of touch. This thing came very timely, and the rest of Uchiha Xingliu's abilities have also been improved a lot. For example, teleportation is obtained from the Flying Thunder God technique, which allows him to teleport at will within a range of 10 kilometers, but if it exceeds, coordinates are still needed to assist. Uchiha Xingliu was not disappointed. After all, it was only purple-level teleportation. The appearance of wood release is the result of his fusion of the three-attribute ninjutsu of earth, water and yang. After he has been idle to blue. Now, except for the lack of fairy arts, he can really cosplay a wave of Senju Hashirama. The most important thing is that this ability, like before, has a way of practice in his mind. The prerequisites for training are not high, as long as you have the three attributes of water, earth, and yang, of course. The training knowledge clearly states that although wood release is a bloodline elimination of the three attributes, the strength of wood release depends entirely on the individual. Thinking of this, he took out the training scroll that he had prepared long ago with a strange look on his face and handed it to Tsunade. There was nothing else, he was just very curious. After Tsunade's training, will it only be used to build houses like Yamato? Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tsunade took the scroll handed over by Uchiha Xingliu, raised her eyebrows slightly, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. She gently opened the scroll, and saw that it was densely written with words. She looked up at Uchiha Xingliu, and her expression revealed a questioning meaning, and said, "What is this? It looks very advanced." There was a gleam of curiosity in her eyes, and she was full of desire to explore this mysterious scroll. This scroll was the first gift that Uchiha Xingliu officially gave her, and it must be very precious. She couldn't help but feel a little expectant and nervous in her heart, as if she was opening an unknown treasure chest. Uchiha Xingliu looked at Tsunade's expression, and couldn't help but feel a little funny in his heart. He raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and said with a mysterious smile, "This is a scroll for practicing wood release. How is it? Are you satisfied?" That there was a kind of expectation in his eyes, as if he was waiting for Tsunade's reaction. After hearing that this was a scroll for practicing wood release, Tsunade's eyes suddenly widened and she looked at him in disbelief. Her reaction made Uchiha Xingliu nod with satisfaction, which was exactly the expression he wanted to see. However, he also understood why Tsunade had such a strong reaction. In the general perception of the ninja world, wood release is a kind of blood limit. This special ability can usually only be passed down through blood. Therefore, for most people, mastering wood release is almost an unattainable dream. However, this scroll broke this inherent perception. It carries a possibility that non-bloodline people can also master wood release. No wonder Tsunade has such an incredible expression. It is like opening a door to a new world. At this time, Tsunade suddenly pulled Uchiha Xingliu's hand and ran towards the direction of the Senju mansion. Her heart was full of excitement and expectation. Although she couldn't understand the scroll for a while, she knew that as long as she returned home and gave it to Uzumaki Mido, she would be able to get the answer. Tsunade clenched her hands tightly, as if she was going to sweat in her palms. Nono stood behind, watching Tsunade and Uchiha Xingliu running hand in hand, and a faint envy surged in her heart. She knew that she also wanted to ask Uchiha Xingliu for a gift, but after hesitating for a long time, she still didn't dare to ask for anything. She was an orphan and was still living under someone else's roof. Although Uzumaki Mido and the people in the yard liked her very much, her previous experience as an orphan made her too sensible and restrained, so at this moment, she just suppressed her thoughts in her heart. Tsunade took him all the way, and soon ran to the destination and found Uzumaki Mido. At this time, Uzumaki Mido was lazily lying on a bench, enjoying the sun. There was a trace of satisfaction and relaxation on her face, as if she had forgotten the troubles of the world. and the Chinatsu who had been by her side before she became Hokage. At this time, she was not by her side again. I guess he went to deal with her affairs again. Tsunade pulled Uchiha Xingliu and walked quickly to her, and said anxiously. Grandma Mito, look, this is a gift from Uchiha Xingliu. Her tone revealed a trace of excitement and expectation, which made Uzumaki Mito curiously open his eyes. This is the practice scroll of wood release. Hearing Tsunade's words, Uzumaki Mito immediately stood up from the chair. She took the scroll handed over by Tsunade and examined it carefully. Uchiha Xingliu stood quietly by the side and did not stop Uzumaki Mito's actions. He knew the value of this scroll and what it represented. In fact, although this scroll can allow people to practice wood release according to the above steps, it is not much different from other attribute ninjutsu. The power depends on the person who uses the escape technique. Just like Hashirama Senju can calm the troubled times, while Yamato can only be used to build houses. This difference does not come from the escape technique itself, but from the strength of the user. Tsunade, as the granddaughter of Hashirama Senju, has the blood of Uzumaki and Senju flowing in her veins, so her blood talent is naturally good. In the future, she will reach the level of Kage, which is enough to prove her potential. The wood escape training scroll, coupled with the blood pill prepared by Uchiha Tsuryu, may really allow Tsunade to reproduce the style of Hashirama Senju. However, for others, they do not have these unique conditions. They are lucky to be able to reach the level of Yamato. After all, Yamato's experience itself is special. He once merged Hashirama Senju's cells and survived successfully. This in itself shows his uniqueness and his specialness, because, except for those who are born with 3 attributes, others who want to practice the scroll need to practice the 3 attributes first, and the practice process of these 3 attributes will take them a lot of time and energy. In the end, they found that such efforts are not as practical as specializing in one attribute. Even the senior ninjas only started the practice of the second attribute after years of practice. Therefore, for those who are not talented, they may not learn until they die if they try such a path. Such a simple truth. Uchiha Xingliu believes that Uzumaki Mito can also understand. Sure enough, after reading the scroll, she frowned and revealed deep thinking in her eyes. Then, she looked at Uchiha Xingliu with a strange look. In her opinion, the author who can give such a detailed scroll for practicing wood release should have mastered wood release. And Uchiha Xingliu originally opened the Mangekyo Sharingan. She originally thought that Uchiha Xingliu could only reach the level of Uchiha Madara at most, but now, the abilities of wood release and Mangekyo Sharingan have been concentrated in the same person. Thinking of this, a picture flashed through Uzumaki Mito's mind, making her face even more strange. In the picture, Susanoo was wearing the true thousand hands, and Uchiha Xingliu stood on the head of the Buddha, roaming the battlefield with a wild laugh. Uchiha Xingliu didn't know the picture that flashed in Uzumaki Mito's mind, but he felt that her sight was a little strange, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. He felt that Uzumaki Mito might be thinking about something abnormal, so he decided to step forward and interrupt her thoughts. He smiled and said, "Grandma Mito, this scroll is my New Year's gift to Tsunade. What do you think?" "Not bad, right?" That his tone revealed confidence and complacency, and he seemed to be very satisfied with his gift. His voice made the image of Uchiha Xingliu's crazy laughter in Uzumaki Mito's mind disappear a lot. It was just looking at the face in front of her that made her want to laugh. After all, the crazy laughter of Xingliu in her mind just now was a bit too devilish, but as a woman, when she heard about the gift, her IQ instantly increased by 100. Seeing her eyes light up, Uchiha Xingliu inexplicably felt something was wrong. Before he could make the next move, Uzumaki Mito asked, "Xingliu, where is my gift?"